What's up, everyone? So when I was first learning to code, I kind of overestimated the barrier to entry. Like, I thought that it would be harder than it actually was, and I don't want this perception to discourage anyone from learning how to code. For me, learning to code has been a very gratifying process, and I want to help you all. Learn to code if you are interested. So this is my Intro to Python series. So let's get started. So this website is a very good resource. It's actually what I used when I was learning. So they basically have a section specifically for Python, and if you see here on the left, the first section is basically the intro. It kind of just describes like what Python does, what it's used for, and then they basically list out all of the major concepts that you should learn. In this video, we're going to be learning about variables and data types, so these first two sections right here. Okay, so the first thing that you should know is that a variable is basically a placeholder for some sort of data. So in Python, we basically are working with lots of data, and we want to basically have labels so that we can reference that data later on. The most basic example that I can give is just x is equal to 1. So in this case, x is our variable, and we're assigning it the value of 1. So then later on in our code, if we print x and then run our code, then you see it prints out 1 because we're printing x, but x is a variable that contains the value 1. But there's some things that you should know. So you see right here, I'm assigning it the value 1, but it doesn't have to be the value 1. Like, I can do the string hello, and if I rerun it, we get hello. So variables can hold any type of data. Variable naming convention is something that you should be aware of. So you always want to use a name that's representative of the data that it's storing. So like in this case, here, I'm actually going to change this to my name. And then since this is my name, I'll name that I'll just name it name. So then if we print name, it works the exact same. So you basically want your variable names to be representative of what it's storing. Okay, so what if you want a variable name that has multiple words in it? For example, what if I wanted this variable to be called like my name? And there are a couple naming conventions that help deal with this. The first way is called Camel case, and it's basically where you use any word after the first word, you capitalize only the first letter. So let's just say I wanted to name this variable my name. Then I'd start out with my, and then since name is the second word, I'd capitalize only the first letter. So my name with in capitalized. So this is one way that you can have a multi-word variable name. But my favorite way is called, I think it's called snake case. Yeah, it's called snake case, and it's where you use an underscore to separate multiple words. So in this, and all the words are lowercase. So in this instance, we would say my underscore name. So sometimes we want to create multiple variables, and that might look something like this. You can actually do this all on one line. So to do this, you basically you'd first start by saying my name and then your name, and then equals Harrison, and then test. And now this will work the same way because it's going to assign my name to the first string, and then it's going to assign your name to the second string. And you basically have to separate each item with a comma. So I wanted to mention real quick that W3 Schools has some exercises for each topic. And so for example, like we just kind of covered the variable section, and you see there are these 7 exercises. I'd definitely recommend taking the time to work through these, as it'll really help your understanding. So like I'll just do the first one real quick. So create a variable name create a variable named car name and assign the value Volvo to it. Okay, so in this case our variable is going to be car name, and we're assigning Volvo to it. And then we'll say submit answer, and we got it correct. I'd recommend doing it for all the sections as we continue through this course. Okay, so now that you know that a variable can store data, it's time to talk about what types of data we can actually work with in Python. So let me go ahead and write out all the major data types and then we'll talk about them. So these are some of the major built-in data types. So the first one is a string, and this is any text data. So for example, like Harrison and test would be considered strings because they're encapsulated, or they're contained in quotation marks, which means that they're like textual data. So anything that any characters or letters will most likely be a string. So the second data type is an integer, or an int for short, and an int is any whole number. So like 1 is an integer, like 2 is an int, 23, 234, any real number, any real whole number is going to be an integer. And then a float is any number with a decimal point. So if we had like 234.5, now this is a float because there's a decimal point and it's a number. But if we didn't have that decimal point, then it's an integer. What exactly is a bool? A bool is either a true or false value. Just to demonstrate, we could say like this test is equal to true or false. But yeah, so basically a boolean is either a true or false value. And if we were to print that out, it'd just look like this. Okay, I've kind of summarized the topics. Yeah, so basically a list is going to be a container for multiple values. But like I said, we'll get into that later on. I hope this video helped. Stay tuned for more, and I'll see y'all in part 2.